Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're here for another one of your questions about work. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work. And we bring in friends to talk about the questions on people's mind. And Sydney is a repeat visitor here, as befits the fact that she is Bloomberg Beta's chief of staff. And so, Sydney, we've been getting this question a bunch lately. So take it away. What are we talking about?
Hey, so today we're talking about should my startup buy another company? And this is one that has come up recently because of the economic uncertainty facing most startup founders right now.
Yeah, and I'll just say, it's a weird time to be thinking about that for some, in the sense that like some businesses are just struggling to hold on, and but at that time is the very moment when it comes up, because other businesses are struggling too, and there's often an opportunity to buy them. Most startups spend a lot of their time thinking about. Um, that's not true. Many people who start companies spend time thinking about one day I might get acquired. They may not even admit it. They may secretly think about it. And, Sydney, I know you've been working closely with a lot of the founders who we've backed. And, what you see is that once people start opening up about it, it's actually on their mind a lot. And the weird thing that happens is many of them then find themselves in a position of being the acquirer, because their company is doing well enough and somebody else approaches them and dot, dot, dot. And so the usual way that call goes is like this, which isn't great, is, hey, such and such dropped in our lap, and I think it could be good because, they could accelerate our roadmap, we could hire those people, blah, blah, blah. I think the vast majority of situations, and I say this having been an M&A person in a big company, having bought startups, blah, 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 and now advising many, many founders who we've been fortunate to serve at Bloomberg Beta, it's almost always a terrible idea. And even exploring it is almost always a terrible idea, because it's such an awful distraction, because you can often figure out. So the first thing I just say is focus, which we're religious about, and you have a focus as a leader of an organization. So the first question I ask myself is, if I hadn't heard about this opportunity, would I have gone to seek it out in order to accelerate my progress toward my focus? And if the answer is no, that's a pretty strong sign you shouldn't be doing too much. If the answer is yes, and by the way, many big companies, they have companies that other companies they've tried to acquire over the course of years. They're just like hanging out, waiting for the right timing, hoping it works out because they know it fits their roadmap. And in a startup, the need is even more pronounced because you just have fewer resources, so you really have to focus. Now, at the same time, sometimes startup to startup acquisitions can end up being magical. Surmise and Twitter, is an example people talk about. I don't know how it worked on the inside, but where that powered search on Twitter. And so the first thing I think about is, does it accelerate your current plan? Does it accelerate your plan about, well, we needed to hire those 7 people anyway, we might as well just buy them in now. We needed to build this technology anyway, we needed those customers anyway. And not, does it accelerate some plan you have for the distant future, but something that is like literally your focus right now. And if it doesn't accelerate something that you're doing right now, then the question I ask myself is, would I drop everything I was doing right now and shut it all down to focus on what this startup does, which can sometimes be a good idea. But if the answer to those things is no, then I would just stop before engaging, not having a conversation, because oftentimes it's flattering to talk to a company that wants to be acquired. You think you're going to learn stuff, which you might, and maybe that's a reason to talk to them once. But you can usually figure out whether a deal is doable potentially before you even talk to them once, knowing things like, if it's a venture-backed startup, how much money have they raised? How fast are they growing? How many people on the team? Where are the people on the team? But if you do want to explore it, then the first thing you should try to do is clear out all the obvious stuff. Well, are your investors going to force you to sell for too high a price? As opposed to what most people do is they try to figure out, well, is there a reason I want to do this? And then I'll look for all the stuff that might be a blocker, put the blockers up first. And then a few standard questions I ask, why is the company actually selling? Like, what is their motivation? What do the people hope to get out of it? And then who has control? Because sometimes in these situations, investors have one interest and founders have another. And so you have to figure out who has control and what do they want. Sometimes I think about, do you actually need to buy the whole company? Or sometimes you can just pay them for some assets. Hey, we'll buy your customer list off you because you pivoted. And then I think about given what they want, are they willing to take what it is you can give them, which sometimes is equity in your company, sometimes it's cash. And so you just have to figure out, is the currency you have on offer of value to them? So those are some of the questions that I think about. Usually the answer is no, but does it apply to your focus? I don't know. How does that land, Sid?
Yeah, I think that sounds, I mean, that's very sound, right? In the sense that I think also during these times of economic uncertainty or ambiguity, um, there's this dire need to make your company valuable in some way. And the best way to continue to make your company valuable is in making sure that you're hiring the proper folks to support your dream and your team and the company's vision, but also staying hyper focused on what you need to do because these things can become so distracting. And even if this is a project that you might want to explore for in your head, oh, I'll just look at this for a couple of weeks, it's never just a couple of weeks, it's always a couple of months, close to 1 year. And so you're going to have to, take out of what you're originally working on to focus on this new thing. If it's not worth it to you within the first, 3, 4 weeks of hypothesizing with this idea, you have to cut it out, just like anything else that you would cut out while you're growing your startup. It's all about testing and then moving on as soon as, not as soon as it doesn't work, but as soon as you start to get that feeling of, wow, this is really not going to happen.
Well, and I do think a thing about acquisitions is that they're unusually hard to test because you just can't. And so you got to be even more disciplined with yourself about it because you can't test it. You got to kind of, if you're going to do it, you got to kind of really do it. And you're taking a bet the company risk every time. On the flip side, sometimes it gives people enormous confidence. It's a thing to point to as a sign of success. Like I remember when I worked at News Corp and MySpace was acquired by News Corp and then acquired its first company, the employee feeling of like, hey, we bought a company was just kind of wild for people there. So that's oftentimes why people do it. Everybody thinks that they're the exception. Whoever you are probably not the exception. So you probably shouldn't do it.
Most likely not.
All right. And I
All
think
right.
that's what we got. All right. Thank you. And for
Thank
those who
you.
want to see past questions, as folks know now, you can find it on thisisnotadvice.work. We've had the JAM team here in the office, a company in which we invested. If you just go to jam.ai, you don't need the rest of the URL. You can find This Is Not Advice there. And to be continued. And I will see you in New York.
See you soon. Bye.
Thank you, Sydney. Bye.